Welcome back to the channel. Thank y'all for hanging with me on this Monday. So yesterday I did a video talking about taking a deep diving crankbait and fishing it significantly shallower than its maximum depth. So a crankbait that dives 15 feet, fish it in 10 feet of water. Or a crankbait that dives 12 feet of water, fish it in 6 feet of water. Grind it into the bottom, and a lot of times you will get a reaction strike from one of those unicorn bass that you can't catch any other way. And that is a very desperate technique. When I go to that, it's usually I'm seeing some fish on down scan, I'm fishing some shallower flats, and I just can't figure out how to get them to bite. Now, most of the time, when you're deep cranking, if it's just a standard offshore crank and bite, it's good. It's like the month of May, so they should just be starting to get out there. And the deep diving crankbait is your best tool. You want to get that bait to go to its maximum depth when it hits the bottom. So if you have a crankbait that dives 15 feet, you're going to fish it in like 14 feet of water, because when that bait is deflecting off the bottom at its maximum depth, it's going to have more of that kicking, side to side searching action that really entices big bites. So that's what you typically want to do with a crankbait. Now, like yesterday's video, there are scenarios where you need to do other things to get fish to bite, and that's what I want to talk about today. So the other end of the spectrum is fishing a crankbait that runs significantly shallower than the bottom you're fishing because there's some type of brush or trash pile down there. So this is a Strike King Series 3. This is a really good bait when you're fishing around brush piles that are sitting in 11 feet of water. So if you think about it, the tree is probably on the bottom and the top of it is like 3 feet off the bottom. So this crankbait dives 8 feet and you're just gonna be ticking the top of it, or even just fishing it right over the top to where it's in their strike zone. They see it, feel it, and swim out of the brush pile and eat it. Now, anytime I'm ever fishing brush piles, I typically have a 10-inch Texas rig worm rigged up, or a 7.5-inch Texas rig worm, and a shaky head, depending on if there's current or how deep it is, but the 1/8 ounce, 3/16, 1/4 ounce shaky head, some kind of trick worm or finesse style worm on there. But a lot of times you're not always going to get those fish to bite with just a worm. You got to kind of entice them, get them excited, get the school fired up, and then if there's 2 or 3 in there, you can throw back with the worm. But a lot of times banging this crankbait into the side of the brush pile is going to fire up that little pot of fish that is suspended around that brush pile. So it doesn't always have to be this bait. You know, if you live on a lake that the brush is out a little bit deeper, you might have to go to like a Series 5 and bang that into the top of the brush pile that may be sitting out in like 10 feet of water, or 11, 12, 13, 14 feet of water, and the top of it is in 10 feet of water, where I was going with that. But do the math, and the whole key is just to get a bait that runs like 3 or 4 feet shallower than where the bottom is. And it's not always going to be like man-made brush piles. A lot of times it's just going to be wood that has been either blown into the lake, has washed into the lake with current or flooding or whatever it may be. Because down here in Florida, we're not allowed to put any brush piles in the lake. That's against the law. So everything that I fish here is just what's been blown in the lake or has been washed in during storms. Same thing goes for like the Alabama River. The whole bottom of the river from one end to the other is just littered with trees. Now, you find the right tree, it's going to have a lot of fish in it. So this isn't always going to be the brush piles that you just go out there and drop. Now, if you do that on your lake, this is also a really good way to go fire them up. Let's say you dropped a bunch of brush piles in a similar depth. You only need one crankbait and go run all those brush piles. Now, most of the time, you're going to be fishing stuff that you find graphing around or that you've just hit with other lures. Try to hit them with a crankbait. But the whole key here is taking a crankbait that runs 3 or 4 feet shallower than the bottom of your lake. That should keep the bait out of the brush pile, hanging it. You just want to bring it right over the top, hit the very top of it. And I'll say one other thing. Your 6XDs, 8XDs, those baits really dig. I like a crankbait that doesn't have as rounded, just look at the bills of a 6XD. I like more of these Series 3, Series 5 type bills where they don't dig down as hard. I don't want my bait to get hung up. I just want it to make a little bit of contact with that brush pile. And again, that's going to entice the bite, fire up the school, get those fish to really get going when it's very tough. So there's another one of those techniques. You are probably desperate. It's probably hard to catch them, but you know there's some fish in the brush. You know you want to focus your efforts on figuring out how to catch them. It's not always just a worm that is going to pull the fish out of those trees. A lot of times you've got to get a reaction strike with a crankbait, and that's one of your easiest baits to do it. And again, a lot of times you don't even have to hit the brush pile. As long as it's just close, bass love a crankbait, and they love it all over the country. I fish a lot of tannic water here down in Florida, so it's usually a fire tiger or some type of sexy shad, bright, a lot of white in that bait, and that gets those fish to react. So try that, guys. Good luck to you, and I'll see you on the water.